Yo, yo, yo. Just kidding, this is supposed to be professional, right? Welcome to my seminar where I plan to critically analyse and evaluate the two design processes that I use in my practices as a budding VisCom student. It's Julia, in case you didn't know. I wasn't really keen on filming myself. As you can imagine, isolation has got to me and I'm not looking the best. Not that I really ever am, especially for uni or doing uni work or doing an assignment. So personally for me, I find visual communication to be an extremely broad term. For me, it's not just a mathematically planned form of art, it's storytelling, conveying a message, and understanding of an idea. The saying goes, a picture speaks 1,000 words. The way I will communicate an idea, for example, my own website has a story to tell. Will it be fun? Will it be adventurous, outspoken, corporate? Anything along those lines. Graphic design is used to bring the idea to life and communicate the story to the customer or viewer. Being such a broad term, I've narrowed down a few examples of visual communication I have learnt to familiarise myself with over my years of studies as a design student. Some of these include editorial covers, illustrations, typography, corporate identity, interface design, and fact sheet. The two processes that I facilitate as a designer are solution-based design and design for creation. Just a quick visual example of each that might give you a hint as to why the processes are different. If the name isn't a given, solution-based design is used when there is a problem to be solved. The example I've used is a little illustration I did of the mapping of a mini strata business in Curry. The problem was the developer wanted to simplify the original blueprints of the site map to upload to the website so customers better understood the site. Less information, less numbers, less fussy bits, just visually simple illustration that highlights the important information. Problem solved. Design for creation is my preferred method, but rarely used, especially with clients. It's a much more fluid approach and is ever-changing depending on the inspiration and the experimental phase throughout. There is no problem to be solved, just an inspiration made into a concept, then maybe something that catches the eye and provokes a thought or 10. It's kind of like saying, I will create something. You don't need it, but you will want it. So just a quick map or timeline of the steps that I take to facilitate solution-based design include getting the brief, analysing the brief, and during the analysis this could potentially lead to a reconstruction of the brief, research, initial ideas, prototype, testing, feedback and evaluation, and of course the final product. So I don't know if you can tell by the squiggly lines, but I've made it out to be so the start of the brief is quite a problem, and as the line progresses it kind of narrows down to be the final product, so the problem is being solved. Before I get into any legitimate steps, I need to put on my thinking cap. No, not that thinking cap. This is what my thinking cap would look like. I need to be 1, well rested. 2, if it's the morning, I need to have had a hot coffee. 3, if it's the afternoon, I need to have had a red wine. 4, I need to be well fed. 5, I definitely need to have a clear space. And 6, I need a clear mindset. To do so, before I commence analysis of the proposed project, I must put myself into this clear mindset to allow for optimal solution-based thinking. For example, if I'd just woken up after an unpleasant nap, had a bad dream maybe, had not had a coffee and my dog had crapped all over the floor, would this be an optimal time to consider analysing a proposed problem for a client? Would I be in a good thinking and solving mindset? No. So the first and foremost step of solution-based design is an in-depth analysis. Before commencing any methods of research, an analysis of the initial problem allows for a better understanding to recognise the need for the required design. The example I'll be using is this logo that I've done for this woman who owns Bennett Realty in Curry. I'll show you the afters in the next slide. And once you've done an initial analysis, you might even have to reconstruct the brief just to eliminate any irrelevant information, and furthermore it reinforces the underlying key issues that need to be solved, which just allows for a clearer understanding of the problem as the designer. An in-depth exploration and investigation into the problem is a vital key to find the most suitable solution. This kind of research could include researching a target market when designing for an audience or a specific client. For me, I conduct a lot of my research on the internet, over social media, even through books, magazines, Pinterest, mood boards, just getting inspiration and finding out what else is out there, what similar products or what similar designs exist, what you can learn from them, how they can be improved, what they can add to your project. So personally, I find the easiest way to convey initial ideas is through some simple sketches, just hand sketches with pencil and paper, or even on iPad through an illustrating software. Conceptual sketches can be used as a design tool not only to facilitate the design process, but it also enables me to establish a theory, a sociology, philosophy and culture of the design, which ultimately strengthens the work and gives the solution a bit of meaning. An experimental approach should be taken whilst conceptually sketching to allow for numerous possibilities of potential solutions that can be eliminated further into the process. So once I've narrowed down my prototypes, I begin to test them. As you can see, I've got a couple of the different logos that I was playing around with for this Bennett Realty. I'll go back and get feedback from her even, see how she's feeling, what she's leaning towards. I'll continue to play around, and I'll go back to the questions that I was asking myself in the research stage, such as, does the prototype answer all the questions that I was asking? If not, what needs to change? Other questions that could be answered include, does it function? Does it look good? Is it safe? What can I do to improve it? It's rare that the first conceptual idea that is then prototype, tested and evaluated is the final. And then after all the testing, evaluating and feedback, I guess you kind of get a final product. So boom, this was the logo that we ended up going with. She liked it and I liked it. I thought it was just a little classier than the initial brown, and I can't even remember the colours of it, but just clearer. You can obviously tell that it's something to do with housing. So she was pretty happy with it. So when designing for creation, you might notice my squiggle is like the opposite to solution-based design. It starts off skinny and gets fat. So the steps I'll take are finding an inspiration, arrangement, experimentation with colour, pattern, texture. Potentially a new idea might stem from the experimentation. And then we go into observation, digital manipulation, and the final product. So designing for creation involves an method to visually communicate the idea or concept. This design process is formulated from inspiration, creativity and imagination, with freedom to express any concept or idea with no limits or boundaries to confine me to a certain criteria or solution. This fluidity of a process can be complex, as the many varied notions of inspiration will inspire different ideas, resulting in varied methods to approach the design. Unlike solution-based design, the process for creative design may be less professional and more authentic, and a different result will occur from a true inspiration or passion. It could be more likely to draw an emotional response from the viewer or observer, as it is stemmed from an emotional thought or idea rather than a problem that requires solving. Despite this process evolving to suit the inspiration, there are a few key points in the creative design process that have reoccurred in previous experiences when designing for creation. An initial discovery of inspiration is a key part in the design process. Finding inspiration is generally an important step, said Daska. Personally, finding inspiration to create involves a walk through nature, preferably the beach, little marine organisms, patterns in rock pools or snail trails, as you can see on the images I have there. They're just a few examples of what could shine a light on a potential concept or idea that roots from these sightings. Once I've found some inspiration, if it's physical inspiration, I will be sorting and arranging out the different findings. The inspiration found from patterns in natures, like for example the rocks above, can often lead to the arrangements of the physical findings or potentially the initial drawings or sketches if I'm illustrating. The next phase is usually experimentation with techniques of repetition, colour, gradient assortment is a favourite, uniformity and many more to visually see and compare ideas to begin forming a rough skeleton of the idea or the concept. The experimental phase is one of my favourites. Sometimes more than one outcome or idea will stem during the experimental phase or even inspire a new completely irrelevant concept. This could be considered to be as the sudden illumination phase, as once conceptualised by Henry Poincare. So the crucial step after or even during the experimental phase is just note-taking, so observing, documenting, taking photos, drawings, videos. I normally do an Instagram montage of a work that I'm doing, so I've got constant videos stacked on top of each other and I can save it as one whole story and watch the progression happen. It allows me to reflect in case the final idea doesn't sit correctly, and I can look at the different concepts that I've created along the way to redirect my approach that needs to be required. So during the observation phase, when I do photograph, that can often be the final product where I won't actually do anything further with it. I'll just leave the photo as is and upload it to be used as a print or visual design, I guess. But otherwise, I will upload it into the computer to be digitally edited and manipulated in things such as Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. And now when I'm experimenting in a digitalized manner, the possibilities to create are much more limitless than just simply using the materials at hand. Digital manipulation can give the work new meaning, for example, chopping and pasting a single item to enforce pattern, repetition or rhythm, giving potentially a new value to the original material used, especially if the original material is insignificant. So yeah, once it's done, I don't really seek any validation from others, just as long as I'm happy with it and I think it's aesthetically pleasing and, it's something that that I've made from inspiration and that has a meaning to me, then I'm usually pretty stoked with it. And, I'll upload it to my social media, where that's the only place I really go to for criticism of people who follow or have similar interests to me, and I can get constructive criticism to guide me for next time or potentially make changes. But yeah, 9 times out of 10 I'll just be stoked with the result. So really, to conclude, like, obviously both processes are always going to be different. I'm going to change little steps in each of them at different times depending on, multiple things. But solution-based design for me is problem solving. It's probably the more professional approach. It's how I'm going to put myself in someone else's shoes and try and fix their problem. Whereas designing for creation is just pure, it's more my art side, my coming from inspiration. It's an ever-evolving process that I never really take note of what's happening, but there are similar steps in all the times that I have done it. So to sum it up, I've kind of put it in as solution-based design is I will solve your problem and you will pay me, versus design for creation where you don't need but want what I've created. Thanks for listening.